Hello there, I'm science fiction, fantasy, horror, and middle grade author Adam Troy Castro with another installment of Social Distancing Story Hour, here to help you guys and help me weather this quarantine of ourselves and personalities. This story is 23 years old. It was published in this book, Urban Nightmares, and it's called What Happened Next. As they sped away from Lover's Lane, Brad and Debbie must have dragged the escaped maniac down the road for the better part of a mile before his prosthetic hook snapped off the end of his right arm. Momentum being what it is, he slid another 60 feet alongside their speeding jalopy before what was left of his momentum went the way of his dignity, and he slid to a stop on his ragged, friction-burned belly. The maniac cursed in pain and frustration as their taillights disappeared around the next curve. Shit! 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 They had been such promising victims. He had been stalking them ever since they pulled up to the shady spot beneath the trees. Brad had been blonde and crew-cut, Debbie bouncy and ponytail. They'd sat together watching the moon for so long that the maniac almost fell asleep waiting for the big lug to make his move. Then Brad put on the rock and roll station, and they started to neck, their two profiles merging beneath the silhouette of the fuzzy dice hanging from the rearview mirror. And the emboldened maniac had begun to inch forward, the razor-sharp hook that he sported in place of a right hand glinting hungrily beneath the cold, pitiless moon. He had just finished the hook around Brad's door handle, already savoring the slaughter to come, when the radio station broke into the song to blast an urgent bulletin about the escaped hook killer and his penchant for assaulting couples parked at lovers' lanes. Debbie had said, "Oh my God, Brad, I'm scared. We gotta go home right now." And Brad had said, "Don't worry, baby. I'm here to protect you." And Debbie had said, "No, I mean it, Brad. This place gives me the creeps." And Brad had said, "Oh, well, if you insist." And then Brad had turned the ignition, and by now the maniac was trying really, really hard to disengage his hook from the door handle, but he couldn't because it was stuck. And Brad put the car into drive and roared away in a shower of gravel, with the hapless maniac managing to run alongside for all of 20 feet before Brad sublimated his frustrated carnal urges in a burst of wholly unnecessary speed. Boom! Leaving the maniac to endure a mile of being dragged alongside the car, shouting and cursing and scooping up the furry remains of roadkill squirrels in his rapidly ballooning pant legs. Now, with his hook receding with the taillights of his intended victims, the maniac lay twisted on the pavement, in clothes worn through from friction, with an arm that ended in a stump instead of a killing implement. He had one of the world's all-time worst cases of belly rub, and he was ranting in the tone of a madman whose murderous rage had just been stoked to a fever pitch. But what he really felt as he unsteadily rose to his feet was a bottomless sense of inadequacy. Did things like this ever happen to Jason? To Freddy? To Pinhead? To Michael Myers? To Jack, the father of them all? Of course not. They had all the luck. He slapped some of the road dust off his now threadbare clothing and gazed hopelessly at a highway now completely abandoned by cars. He had no idea what to do next. Not where to go or how to get there, or who he should stalk once he arrived. No direction struck him as particularly promising. For a moment there, he was even tempted to just screw the stalking and willingly return to the asylum, where he never got dragged behind cars and always got a second helping of pistachio ice cream on Thursdays. And then the gods of boogeymen smiled down on him in the form of another pair of headlights coming down the road. He stuck out his thumb, Or rather, he tried to stick out his thumb, because having bumped his head a few times during that last 100 yards or so, he wasn't thinking all that clearly. Actually, he stuck out his bloody stump. The car stopped for him anyway. It was a fine vehicle, shiny and red, with the kind of expansive tail fins that had gone out of style forever 3 decades earlier. It was so clean that even in the darkness, he could see the ghost of his own reflection in the finish. A beautiful blonde woman leaned over and said, "You look like about 200 miles of bad luck." The maniac had never been skilled at witty repartee. Woo! I am doing a lot of problems, but I'm going to do the best I can here. The maniac had never been skilled at witty repartee. Huh? It's an expression, she explained. You know, like something the cat dragged in, only more colorful. I just said it because you're one of the most pitiful sights I've ever seen. You're going to have to tell me how come you have all those dead squirrels sticking out of your pants. I'm sure the story's simply fascinating. Do you need a ride? God, she was gorgeous. The kind of kill you only saw in the movies. But distrust of his own good fortune made him hesitate. Things had always gone wrong for him ever since the traumatic incident that had rendered him a maniac in the first place. He had broken into a woman's apartment intent on nothing more savage than burglary and was met by a Doberman that bit off his right hand. He never lived down the stories about what happened when the lady came home and brought her dog to the vet. The boys at the asylum never quit ribbing him about it, the worst among them being old man Kine, who to this day loved to sneak up behind him and cry, "Woof, woof." The bastard, like he was in a position to criticize with his lousy taste in clothing. The voice of the pretty blonde lady brought the predator back to the here and now. "You don't want to be walking alone this time of night," she said. That made up his mind for him. He was an escaped maniac, damn it. Latest in a long line of noble predators stretching all the way back to Countess Bathory. Was he going to sit idly by and let a little setback like being dragged by his hook for a mile or so make him a weepy whiner? Hell no. He had zip and zowie. He was going to get back on his horse and ride. He smiled. Sure, I could use a ride. He reached for the door handle with his one intact hand and heard a click. The second he exerted pressure on the door handle, a pair of clamps emerged from the casing and snapped shut around his wrist, forming an unbreakable handcuff. He tried to withdraw his hand, but found it held tight. He glanced back at her, confused, and saw in her triumphant eyes the look of a predator far more experienced than he. "Silly boy," she cooed. "I offered you a ride. I never said you could get in." Through a haze, the maniac realized he'd heard about this woman before, during long, lazy afternoons at the asylum, whenever he and the other maniacs got together to swap tall tales about those of their persuasion still at large. She was the door-handle dragster. "Hey," he said. She blew him a kiss and peeled out. Of course, unlike Brad, she didn't obey any speed limits. The end. And I screwed up a lot during that one, and I'm sorry, but have a good day.